All right, welcome to an edition of the Cut Pro Wrestling Podcast. My name is Randy Zellea from backsportspage.com. It's been a long time since we've talked professional wrestling here at BSP, but let's do it now. Special guest coming up in a few short moments. My interview with Brian Kendrick, or the Brian Kendrick, if you remember him from the WWE. But first, I want to let you know that this show is brought to you by our good friends over at SeatGeek.com. You want to watch the best of pro wrestling action of AEW, WWE, and TNA? Go to SeatGeek.com right now. Lock in your seats for the price that you want to pay over at SeatGeek.com. Jump right into the interview in a second. Don't forget to follow the show at backsportspage.com. Check out my wrestling columns there on AEW and WWE. Next episode is going to be a special audio-only episode with Titus O'Neil, the real deal Titus O'Neil. He has a new book that came out this past holiday season, which he's still up promoting. Definitely want to check that out. But right now, you've heard enough of me. Let's go with the Brian Kendrick. It's probably a stick of some of the books I have on the wall here, your resume in this wonderful industry that we all love. Brian, first off, how are you doing today, man? Thanks for giving me some time.
I'm doing well, Randy. Thank you for the kind words, and thanks for having me.
So, I guess if we want to start from the beginning, because obviously a lot of your career has been discussed, but I don't think I've ever heard when you fell in love with the world of pro wrestling. When did that happen?
Yeah, so it was watching WrestleMania 6. It was just came out on VHS. I was going over to a friend's house to play board games. I wasn't interested in wrestling at the time. I didn't know it outside of the cartoons.
Okay.
And I saw the Ultimate Warrior run into the ring. When I walked over to my friend's house, I said, stop. We'll play the board game once the match is over. And I showed up just during the main event, and I fell in love. I wanted to be the Ultimate Warrior. He was He-Man in real life. I loved the whole idea of that Conan the Barbarian, the ultimate, macho man, and then I watched pro wrestling, and then I saw all the other varieties of characters and archetypes there could be, and I consumed as much as I could.
Yeah, I remember watching WrestleMania 6 down the street at my friend's house. I fell in love with wrestling the year before WrestleMania 5.
Oh.
So it was seeing that Hogan, Savage, and then seeing Warrior Rude. And I was a Warrior guy just like you. I loved the Ultimate Warrior. I thought the Ultimate Warrior at the time, like now that I think back at it, it's a superhero who came to life. It's a comic book character. You're just like, holy crap, that's real. And then you have Hulk Hogan. Like, and any kid, I was 9 years old, I knew who Hulk Hogan was. Everybody knew who Hulk Hogan was. And to see the Warrior come out and topple Hulk Hogan, you're like, wow, they really went like I can't believe the Warrior beat him. And it was like he was the guy. So your take from and how old was that for you when you saw that?
I would have been I want to say fourth grade. I would have been maybe right around 10 years old. I was born in 79. I don't remember what year that came out, and then add 6 months or whatever for the VHS, up to a year for the VHS to come out, I guess.
Okay, so you and I are the exact same age. So I'm 44 as well. So
okay, I'm 45. Yeah.
So okay, so you and I are right on the same age. So it was right around that same time. So one of the things from that time period, and I know, obviously you trained with Shawn, but at that point in time, because of the larger than life characters, it took me a long time to really appreciate the workers in the business, the Heart Foundations, the Rockers, Mr. Perfect. When did you started falling in love with the work rate of the wrestling business?
That's a good question. I loved, Shawn Michaels. But I loved Shawn Michaels more than Bret Hart because of his charisma, because of his appealing to the crowd and all that. And for me as a kid, I found Bret Hart to be off-putting because he wore pink and he wrestled a style that was, while it was realistic, I wasn't here for a real fight. I was here for, the whatever it is that pro wrestling is. So it when the cruiserweights showed up in WCW, and VHSs and with the internet, dial-up internet, and being able to order off of High Spots or RF Video, I would have been around maybe 16, 17 years old when I started getting Japanese tapes and really committing myself to watch wrestling that I didn't instantly like.
And where were you, I guess, living at that point? Because again, you're talking about, getting the VHSs, which today's fan base has no idea about tape trading, has no idea about the lack of accessibility that we have today in the pro wrestling industry. So where were you at that point that you found it to be more of a necessity of doing the tape trading and ordering the VHSs compared to being able to watch it on live television?
It's like location wise, I was up in Lacey, Washington, the Olympia area, small town, 30,000 people. The capital right next door, the whole county, 100,000 people. There's nothing, there was, we had Videoland, and I'd go to Videoland and rent whatever VHSs they had over and over again. When Monday Night Raw and Nitro were on, they'd be competing, but we'd be recording it, my brother and myself. And so I started to get a collection of my own, just in that way. And then through the magazines is when I started to find out, I think maybe I wonder if I ordered through a magazine or if it was online on like wrestling forums or something. I don't know where it would have been, but somewhere I found out about it. And I think RF Video is where I got my stuff from. Them or High Spots, but I know both I got stuff from.
And then around that 96 time, like you said, when the cruiserweights really took off in WCW, I remember watching them. And to this day, I know we've seen almost everything Into the Moon and back, but I thought that match in Disney, went from the Disney Nitro, when they had Malenko and Mysterio won the cruiserweight belt for the first time. That still remains one of my favorite cruiserweight matches of all time. Just
I'll have to go back and watch that. Really?
Yeah. I know what it was. It's like I said, I've seen everything from the Moon since then because I try to watch as much as I can. But I remember being 16 years old at the time, and I remember watching that match going, dude, that was amazing. And like I remember when the the Monday Night Wars DVD came out and they included that match on the DVD, I was like, I got to get that just because I wanted to have it in my collection. Because again, those two guys had much better matches probably afterward, but for the one, that's the one that hooked me into saying, I can't wait to watch Rey Mysterio. I can't wait to watch Malenko. And like when you it has a major significance for you when you remember the exact match.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so for me, that's what it was. Now let's fast forward to 1998, 1999 a little bit. Shawn Michaels decides he wants to open the Shawn Michaels Wrestling Academy. And what drove you to say, you know what, I got to give this a shot?
So when I was, I think I just turned 17, it might have been 16, but it was for my 16th birthday. My grandpa would take each of us, one of his 3 grandchildren, on a vacation. And we went from Washington State to the East Coast, my grandpa, my aunt, and I, and down to Texas. And we're in San Antonio. And I go to this Mexican restaurant, and I want to watch the wrestling on the screen. And so can we sit there? And then they have this special package. And it's Mike Tenay doing a package on Rey Mysterio Jr. It's a Mexican restaurant. We're in San Antonio. All the cooks and dishwashers came from the back to watch this package, and I didn't know who Rey Mysterio was. But all these dudes, they're from Mexico, or their family is. They know who Rey Mysterio is. And I saw this dude my size on this screen, and I said, "Oh man, I can do this." And Rey Mysterio made me believe I could do it. And it happened to be in a Mexican restaurant in San Antonio, and I wound up going to train in San Antonio when Shawn Michaels opened up a wrestling school.
And what can you talk about what the experience was like doing that camp with a guy who, like we were just discussing before, he's been a former WWF champion at that point. And I'm saying the F, not the E, because we're pre-E at this point.
Yeah.
WWF champion, he was the guy in the business for a long time.
Yeah.
A guy you grew up watching. What was that experience like? How involved was Shawn? And what was some of the advice that he gave you and the other students?
The only day he missed was the debut episode of SmackDown, where he was the guest referee. It was The Rock versus, I don't know if it was Rock versus Triple H, and Shawn Michaels super kicked somebody. Yeah, I mean, great moment. That was it. He made every other practice. What I got out of it more than anything was I wanted to impress him. He was a guy who I idolized. Coach Rudy, who opened up early for us, stayed as late as we wanted, was so nice to all of us. Me, I'm a boy, from a small town, and he's there being kind to me in a really scary world of pro wrestling, and it still was kind of scary then. And I wanted to impress Shawn Michaels, so I couldn't have any excuses, and that's what I got out of it.
Anyway, so I'm just putting this together as you were saying that you were from Washington, and there happened to be some other guy who did okay for his career by the name of Bryan Danielson, the American Dragon, and he was from Washington too. So I'm guessing since you guys were both there, did you guys have a relationship before you guys traveled down there, or did you guys both meet and it was coincidental you guys were both from Washington?
It was a coincidence. Shawn's mother, she did a lot of the paperwork and all this, so that's who I talked with before coming down there. Oh, you're from Washington. We've got another guy named Brian who's from Washington. Small world. Yeah, it sure is. Ultimately what happened is he had he had a lot of drive too, and he was putting in extra hours as well. And there was a whole lot of us doing it. And so there was a lot of times where it was just he and I and Rudy Boy. And so we spent a ton of time together. And ultimately, he invited me to come stay in his apartment in San Antonio, because I was driving 98 miles each way to go stay with my aunt. So yeah, it was real nice. They let me come and stay at their apartment for a while. So I bounced around to my buddy Jordan's and blah, blah, blah. And then Danielson and I got signed and moved in to an apartment together in Memphis with Lance Cade and Shooter Schultz and a rotating group of characters. But yeah, Brian and I spent the first year and a half together, real connected at the hip. Yeah.
So, and then you also not only were at the school, but you also competed in Shawn Michaels' Texas Wrestling Alliance at that time too, correct? Yes. So can you talk about someone like Shawn, who's now obviously running NXT and does a phenomenal job with what he's doing out there, but this was the first time Shawn was really putting the headset on, really timing the show out, doing that. What was it like sort of having that first experience in front of a public crowd with not only the guy who you looked up to, and Shawn Michaels running the show, but now you're also in front of a live crowd doing it. So you're not only trying to impress him, but you're also trying to impress a live crowd.
I'm a bashful person, and so but going out there and wrestling, you can't be bashful, and so it's I don't know if it's some sort of Jungian shadow stuff or whatever, and I'm just being bashful because the real me wants to be whatever it is that's out there wrestling. But that's it. You just become something else, at least for me. All these things that I'm afraid to do, I can go out there and dance and prance around and sing and stuff I would never do in real life. And so that's it. I go through a little ceremony or ritual to get myself into a zone, and I just become a different person.
once the red light's on, you start doing a whole bunch of different things you're just not used to doing, and just we know
Yeah, yeah, it's quite weird. I mean, it's I imagine it's just like any sort of your fight or flight or whatever. What are you made of? Well, you behave differently uh, around, let's say, your girlfriend than you do around your girlfriend's mother while meeting her the first time, or you do around your boss or around your friends. So we all play these different characters. Maybe we aren't really playing them, but whatever, we find parts of ourselves that come to the forefront when we're in different situations. When in wrestling, for me, it becomes such an extreme because, again, I'm not the brash person that I am while wrestling.
I have to ask too. You got to see something that the normal public didn't really get to see outside of the Texas Wrestling Alliance, unless you were trading tapes at that point too. Didn't Shawn come out of retirement?
Yeah, yeah. That's right. He wrestled Paul Diamond, if I'm not mistaken. Who Paul Diamond was in the Orient Express, the
Tanaka.
one with the mask.
Was he Kato? Was he Kato or was he Tanaka?
I forget. It's a shame on me, but the one who wore the mask, because
okay, so he was Kato. He was Kato.
Okay, yeah, because he's he's a European descent, not of Asian or Orient. Yeah, so that he wore the mask.
His real name was Bill.
Yeah. I mean, it could have been Bill, but Paul is what I know him as. Yeah. And I think they just did like a street fight, brawl, throw a guy into a ladder, that kind of stuff. But yeah, Shawn came out of retirement for his Texas Wrestling Alliance show, and I can't remember the name of the theater, but yeah, he sure did. I forgot about that, Randy.
Yeah, it was. I remember finally being able to see a copy of the match, and I was like, wow. I'm like, this is like, when did this happen? I'm like, oh yeah, okay, Texas Wrestling Alliance, okay, yeah. So a lot of people remember when you came. Okay, we go back. Try this question again. A lot of people remember when you made your main roster debut in WWE, you were aside of Paul London, but that wasn't exactly the case. Like you said, you and Brian got signed to WWE early, and you had some time in WWE before you had your tag team with Paul London. What was the initial experience like when you finally got up to WWE? And was it like, deer in headlight look? Was it more of like I have a lot to learn, so I'm just going to keep my ears open? Or is it like just like wrestling with the Texas Wrestling Alliance, just on a bigger scale?
No, I was not only was I a young, a boy in my head, but I also looked like one. So I wasn't coming in at 23 years old, but I'm 6'7" with a deep voice and giant muscles. I didn't belong there at any age, but outside of the fact that I would work hard. I cared a lot about wrestling. I studied hard at wrestling. I aspired to put out the best performance I can, and so I gravitated towards, luckily I knew Regal, and that saved me. I think people respect Regal, the wrestlers who I admire and want to wrestle like. They respect Regal. So guys like very lucky to be there when Chris and Eddie were around, and so those are guys who I wanted to wrestle like. Those are guys who I could ask, could you watch my match, please, sir? And those are guys who would watch my matches and give me their advice. And a really hard thing to do is to go out there and perform after receiving advice from one person who you admire and contradictory advice from another person you admire. Then you have to go and perform. You're going to get screamed at. But anyways, that's not a bad problem to have. And so that's how I negotiated my time there.
But I will tell you, you just said three names, which I gotta I got to ask about the first one being William Regal. William Regal has such a reputation of being, I don't want to say just not only a legend in the ring, but a legend out of the ring, and just being able to, I heard how he conducted himself over in AEW on how he said he didn't really work there for that, but he would just go down to ringside and just whoever wanted to work with him, and he would be teaching and helping. He would help anybody.
Yeah.
What was the best advice that you received from William Regal? And after that, I'm obviously not going to talk about too much negative as far as Chris is concerned, but I definitely would love to know about the performer and the advice that Chris Benoit gave to you, and then we'll talk about Eddie in a second. But let's start with William and Chris.
These are things I should think about, like what would be the best advice. I don't know if they ever said any words that like this Churchill like quote that you can take away. What they did was instill work ethic in me, and with both of them, very similar, both Chris and Regal. You can't make any excuses. This logic can't be, because I thought I'd get a good reaction. If it doesn't make sense, if it isn't true to what it is that we're trying to get out there to get people to believe, or whatever it is that we're trying to do. And for them and myself, it was to get people to believe that this was still real by the logic and intensity, to get people to escape. They're not going to think it was real, but they're going to escape and really believe it, and not have any gaps in that work. And that's what I got from those guys, is to just not have any gaps in my work.
While you were with the company, around that time, I think maybe it was obviously it was 2005 and 2007. We lost both Chris and Eddie, and I liked what Chris Jericho said. He says both guys were legends, but both died in different paths. Eddie died a hero, he recovered from his demons, and he was the example for everyone in the locker room on how you should keep fighting. And Chris' tragedy was Chris's tragedy. Can you discuss not about their situations, but about the feeling that you had around those times when both of these deaths happened? I'm not trying to do clickbait or anything else like that, but I'm asking you for your take from your perspective of it.
Yeah, so they both. Q, on just 1 second. There's this rattling. I'm going to ask my wife to get it to stop. Is that okay?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
That's all right. Sorry about that, Randy.
No problem.
Our pipes are so old, when we do laundry, it shakes the house. Okay, back to it. The circumstances revolving around their deaths are so different that the way you're going to feel about it is different. One is I don't know exactly what the details are behind either's death. If I believe Eddie's was an overdose. I'm not sure if that's what the details are, or if it was a heart attack.
They said it was a heart. They said it was a heart attack.
Okay.
But it was more of like he had a sort of like it was like the past abuse to his body. So
Okay.
And, yeah. So, I like I said, maybe I should have rephrased the question. Just from your perspective and from the talent perspective, obviously both were devastating situations.
Yeah.
But both, I think, in their own way, changed the business.
Yeah.
I think Eddie's death made everybody look at the wellness policy a little stronger. I think that's the best way of saying it. And Chris's death made everybody look about the safety of like chair shots and the way the performances. So I guess the real question is, from a performer's perspective, from your perspective, with knowing those types of takes, or at least I'm throwing those takes out, is that the right perspective that the performers had? That like, okay, well, because of Eddie's death and because of that situation, it made it look more at the wellness policy than Chris's about how some of the things that we do as far as impact on the body. Is that accurate or?
Well, so I think, I mean, I'm gonna guess when you're in charge of a company, and especially if it's a publicly traded company, you're gonna have to react when these things happen. You have to show that we're doing something about it. Otherwise, it seems like we're allowing these things to happen. At the same time, things do happen. You know that, for example, you'd say that Chris went postal, and that, you know, the going postal might not be a thing anymore, but it was a thing when I was young, and postal was when the guy who worked at the post office went crazy, right? It was just people snapped, and the company has to react in some regard. What I will say is, out of this, people aren't dying from pill overdoses anymore. Not in the way that they used to. And I've had friends that died from pill overdoses. The chair shots to the head, no one cares. You know, for your brains being scrambled at the when you're shaking in your chair by yourself, you know, at 55, no one cares that you didn't put your hands up, you know, and how cool it looked. It was great at the time or whatever. So do these tragedies that, you know, this is, even if the reactions were done because it had to be done, a lot of good's come out of it.
And that's what I was sort of looking for. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I said, that's what I was looking for.
Okay.
It's more,
yeah.
You know, and I also, while I'm saying this, I have to take you back to the time machine for one minute. From 2006. It was the first time, and I'm not transitioning into it well, but I want to transition to it with you and Paul London. I was in the crowd in 2006 down in West Palm Beach, Florida, in a house show, and I saw you and London with Michelle McCool in your corner. It just hit me now. So like one of those people, when something hits me, I gotta say it out loud, or else I'm gonna lose it. And you guys fought the Pitbulls. They fought Jamie Noble, and I forgot who Jamie's partner was. It's probably gonna.
You want me to tell you?
Sure, go for it. Go ahead.
Kid Cash.
Oh, Kid Cash. Okay, I was almost gonna say Frank Kazarian, but I don't think Kazarian was. I think he was in TNA at that point. So
wow. But I don't ever remember being with Michelle McCool.
Yeah, I believe that was you and London where you had Michelle with you guys for a brief.
It wasn't Ashley Massaro.
No, it wasn't Ashley.
Interesting. It could have been something they did for a house show. That they were trying something out. Weird.
Yeah, so I just remember it was a small, it felt like it was like a small little warehouse. The main event of the show was Booker and Bobby Lashley.
Okay.
And I just remember watching you two guys perform. And I said to myself, you guys fit into that Rockers Hardy Boy category. And I you know, some tandem offense is sort of missing now in wrestling. For tag team professional wrestling, I always felt like guys are now sort of thrown together. Like, you look at, I'll use AEW for example, because I think there's a little bit more pure tag teams in AEW right now than there are in WWE. But you look at the Acclaimed, you look at the Young Bucks, you look at some of these other tag teams. There's a lot of tandem offense, and there's a lot of things that make them. The Lucha Brothers, the same thing. You watch them, and they have signature things that the crowd looks forward to. When the Rockers were in the ring, you were looking forward to that double nip up, the double fist from the top rope, the double drop kick, the Hart Foundation, the things that they did. My God, with the Hart Foundation, very creative. But I also felt the Hart Foundation had two totally different contrast members of Anvil and Brett. It wasn't two similar. What was the working relationship in the ring, like with Paul, how much stuff did you guys go over and say, hey, we have to make sure we do some tandem here, being a team? How much of that did you guys work on together beforehand, or did you guys sort of just make it up as you go along?
Oh, I'm as far as working together, we had a pretty similar feel for the flow, or when the peaks and what we wanted to do for excitement and stuff like that. Any sort of teamwork, we'd figure out when that makes sense with the flow. And while Paul and I were very similar, like the Rockers were very similar, the Hardys, the Rock and Roll Express, and the Young Bucks, it's been this, the blonde and the brunette sort of, they always do the young guys that typically are there for, like us, 1 year, the Rockers 1 year, the Hardys forever, Young Bucks forever. So it's case by case. But Paul was much more of a risk taker than I was. We were very different in our styles. It's just when we worked together, it blended really well.
It's funny too. I remember watching you guys, and when you guys decided to do the split and you went singles for a little bit, you had Ezekiel Jackson with you, and you went the Brian Kendrick. Was there any nerves on your point of going, we had this successful act as a tag team. It was over on SmackDown. Was there any hesitation for your part to say, I want to try and go singles?
No. I didn't see them seeing anything in us going forward. When talking with somebody of some importance there, they told me that they hadn't cared about tag team wrestling since Legion of Doom. And Paul and I had already been relegated to Sunday Night Heat at this point after our run, and so at best we might have to wait out to get another little cycle through. So it was not going to go anywhere.
But that cycle, they haven't done that cycle in a while, though. Like, if you remember, okay, so I'm sorry for cutting you off, and I apologize, but if you look back at the 80s and look at the Hart Foundation was the tag team champions in 87. They lost the belts to Strikeforce, and then Strikeforce lost to Demolition. And eventually, Demolition dropped it back to the Hearts, but the Hearts had to wait 3 years. They don't do that. They don't really do that anymore, where even on a shorter term, 3 years, but it doesn't feel like, okay, well, we gave this group a try the tag belts. They were heels then. Now they're baby faces. We're going to go try this now. It's baby faces. But they don't even really do that anymore. Once you lose the belts, it's like, okay, belts are gone. Boom.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that's missing these days? Like seeing that type of continuity?
It's hard because there's only so much TV time, right? And so, you want to balance fresh faces with giving the people you have some TV time. You want to, invest more in certain characters and stuff. It's impossible to do all these things at once. And I don't know if anybody likes Raw better at 3 hours than they do 2. So something has to give. Something always has to give. And so what you would be stuck with is, maybe 5 tag teams, and they would just be stuck as tag teams and just keep cycling through, because it's either you're the tag champs or the number 1 contenders, or you're off TV. You're fighting for that number 1 contendership, and then if you lose that, you're off TV. While the number 1 contenders go after the champs. All other tag teams are just waiting. So I don't know if that's a better situation to be in or not. I don't know. It's all compromise or give and take, or ups and downs, pluses and
Yeah.
minuses.
If you try to understand if you try to understand it the way it is now, you're going to hurt your head, because sometimes I always hear the great stories of some of the most irrational things was the common sense, and even the common sense things were irrational. So it's like just the way it is. Shortly after you left WWE, after the Brian Kendrick time frame, you traveled around. What was it like to be out of the WWE? I want to say bubble. We'll go WWE bubble and out on the road. What was that like? Sort of hitting the independent scene and traveling. What was that like for you?
Yeah, there's the pluses and minuses. The pluses are you are your own boss. You don't have to worry about pleasing anybody. You got to please the promoter that you're working for, but they just want you to go out there and wrestle. You get to work some weird places, and you get to have the style of match you want to have. The minuses are you don't work, you don't eat.
Yeah.
If you get hurt, you're out of work. The quality of these matches, or the quality of these opponents you could be having, I can go do whatever I want, but this guy might not be any good. So there's pluses and minuses. I enjoy doing the indies. The stress, though, of not having a consistent paycheck, that weighs on you. But the truth is, nobody works for WWE forever. It's never a consistent paycheck. It's just a guaranteed 30 days.
Yeah, and what's funny is you say that, and not everybody works for WWE. I was always going to say, unless you have the last name McMahon, but not even that happens anymore.
Not even that. Not even that. Yeah.
So it's sort of funny, and you got to a point too where you started training, and I have to ask. I wasn't a fan, but it was very publicized that you started training Eva Marie.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like, being in a mode where here's a girl that they're investing a lot of time and money into, and they're trusting you to train her for them?
Yes.
First off, how did the opportunity come about? How did you feel about the confidence they had on you, knowing that you can teach her the ropes? And what was the experience like?
She was real pleasant to work with. It came about through, ultimately through Hunter, I assume, even though that's not who I talked with initially. It was through Canyon Seaman. My approach was, you're not going to be as good of a wrestler as these girls who dedicated their whole life to wrestling. But what you have is a fantastic gimmick. And the gimmick is that the company is paying you to be a wrestler. And these girls had to work super hard. And all you had to do is have a beautiful face. Now, if we can teach you how to take all these moves and wrestle around this character, you really have something. Ultimately, it didn't pan out, but I thought she was real great to work with, and I thought at times that character showed a lot of potential.
Is there a particular reason why you think it didn't work out for her? I know it's so armchair quarterback.
Yeah, I mean the what I've heard is gossip and rumors, and of people who didn't like her and stuff that went wrong, but ultimately, she got released. And I don't know all the details. It's a shame, though.
Yeah, I'd be honest with you. I was always one of those people, and this is just me. And if anyone wants to send me hate tweets or anything else like that, it's Randy BSB on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. And they can shoot me messages on the comments below. I wasn't a fan because, like what you just said, a lot of the girls had worked so hard, and here you are. She's a model, she's an actress, and you could tell it was one of those things where she was just. You wonder what her intentions were. Was it
Yes.
for the wrestling, and that's a casual fan. That's a casual wrestling fan.
Mhm.
Or well, I'm a diehard fan, but like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm
Yeah.
watching, I'm sitting there saying, like, you have a girl like Natalia who's busted her butt, who deserves to have extra TV time, and now this girl hasn't put the time in. It was just like, you know, it's
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
And,
and
and, and I thought the same. I thought the what she should do is surf that heat. You know, people
yeah,
like you hate her. I said that's it. They know you're here because you're beautiful. Let them know you're only here because you're beautiful. That this is a stepping stone to
right.
fame. And to me, you could, because you're not going to catch up. You're not going to catch up with Natty. You're not going to catch up with Bailey. I can't do that, you know, with 3 hours, 3 days a week. We can't do it.
Well, yeah, and you know what the funny thing is too is because it was the Total Diva show, and they were
Mm-hmm.
trying to present everybody in a baby face setting. If
Mm.
they would have done that, it would have been like, man, some of the best baby faces have to go through that heel
Yeah.
run. Like,
Yeah.
you look at Austin. Austin was such a good heel that the crowd turned him babyface. The Rock,
Mm-hmm.
the crowd turned
Mm-hmm.
him babyface.
Mm-hmm.
Look at Randy Orton. Randy Orton was hated. You know,
Mm.
and then the fans turned him. So
Mm.
I think they would have gotten there if she just would have, like you said, just would have done that.
Yep.
Hey, how cool was it that WWE did the 205 live tournament?
Oh, it was awesome. Yeah. Yeah. It was real pleasant surprise. I think the tournament was real special. And the TV show. Regal told all of us, cruiserweights right when it started. He knew that this was only going to last so long, and I know it's only going to last so long, but he was saying it. But guys, you're going to have quality footage that's going to be there forever. So go out there and put on these great matches because this will live forever. These matches will be out there, and there's some really good matches on 205 Live. There ain't 100,000 people on this planet that have seen, those matches. But there's some really good matches. If you like cruiserweight wrestling, there's some good matches on 205.
Can I tell you, I watched it and I'm sitting there. I said, man, there's some. So I think the biggest problem, and what was I think AEW's biggest advantage in the beginning, and in TNA wrestling's biggest advantage in the beginning, is new people were being introduced.
Mm-hmm.
When you have the ability to introduce new stars in professional wrestling, it's fresh. People like there's like I listen to a lot of the Conrad Thompson style podcasts and everything, and a lot of it was talked about. A guy you can only handle a guy being on top for so long doing the same thing for Hogan.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was the expression? Hogan must pose at the end of every show. It didn't matter. Hogan's posing at the end of that show. At the end of that time, Austin was drinking that beer.
Yeah.
Eventually, everybody gets a little burnt out on it, and so introducing new stars, and I think at that time there wasn't much competition for WWE. So all of a sudden, you're inviting these cruiserweights in. It's a new style. It's guys you're serving that fan base of introducing high flying stars. Like I don't like you coming back and also having the introduction of TJP. I don't think wrestling fans would have been able to gravitate towards him in any other introduction than what WWE gave him in the 205 tour.
Yeah. Now, what about a guy like Rich Swann?
Same thing with Rich Swann. I think Rich Swann is one of those guys too. Very charismatic, on top of the world of Impact.
Yeah.
Yes, he had some issues where he ended up being released.
Yeah.
And you can, and same thing with. I have to be careful the way I phrase this because I'm not condoning behavior, but you look at the same thing when Enzo Amare took over the Cruiserweight Championship after the tournament, and he was helping draw eyes to the show.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I like Enzo a lot. He's a funny dude. He's a strong personality. But dude, I think while he didn't wrestle like the rest of us cruiserweights, we knew as frustrating as it might be, that's good for us. Him coming here means that he's going to be talking. That means we're going to get to talk and react, and they're going to get to know who we are, because we're silent film characters to them right now. Yeah, it was good for us.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think once they went away from the 205 live show, I thought it was very, very disheartening, because I don't. I said to the guy who I was always watching a lot of wrestling with, so now you're going to have guys either sink or swim, and it's going to be very, very, very hard to sink or swim in that environment when it's. What's the best way to say this? How many times can you watch Roman Reigns do the Superman punch before it gets a little burnt out? You want to see. You want to be able to see other guys have that opportunity. Can you talk about from how the landscape from the independent side has changed from when you first, after you left in 2008? I think it was 2008. Yeah, 2008 to where it is sort of now, and how the independent wrestling scene has changed. Or has it?
It's about the same. It's about the same. Meaning that the characters backstage, the vibe, the cast of characters. They're being. A lot of the indie shows you go to, like it's very indie. You know what I mean? That stayed the same. I know that people talk about this wasn't a thing before, wrestling for gifts, wrestling for clips, stuff like that. So wanting to get certain clips in. I'm an old guy though, so luckily these kids tend to cater towards me, so I don't have to deal with any of these frustrations. So I guess it's all kind of stayed the same for me, Randy. It was a lot of words for nothing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. I think the hardest thing from a fan perspective right now, and I was talking with a guy who's a local promoter in our area here, and he said the problem now he always feels is sometimes there's too many options. That there's too many indie promoters. Everyone thinks that they have the magic solution to independent wrestling. I just think that sometimes you have to look at it as from the perspective of what's your cup of tea? Because GCW is that more of that hardcore ECW type of style wrestling where you're seeing Nick Gage go in there and crack light bulbs over people's heads. You have the AEW where it's a lot more wrestling, less story. Alternative to WWE where it's more story than wrestling at times. To Impact Wrestling, TNA Wrestling, which is a little different as well. So,
and I think a lot of what indie wrestling is it's a gathering. Most indie wrestling shows are something for guys. They train together because they like it, they enjoy it. They tell themselves that they want to go to the WWE someday, but there's aspects that they haven't taken seriously enough. I don't think they really mean that. That's not a bad thing. If they wrestle in this place forever and it makes them happy, then that's perfectly fine. I think that is what that is, but that hasn't changed. That stayed the same. A lot of indie wrestling is a bowling league, or it's a book club, or it's just something for these guys to do.
Does that ever get frustrating though for someone like yourself w's been doing this for so long? Okay.
Yes.
I didn't even have to finish the question. All right, I love that.
Yeah. I take it very seriously. So yeah, it does get frustrating for me. But this is the bet I made,
Yeah, I understand. What about outside of wrestling? What do you like to do? When we were exchanging emails, you mentioned that you said you don't want to try to do Sundays because it's the NFL Sunday.
Yeah.
What do you like to do? What do you like to watch? What do you do to keep yourself busy?
Okay. So, other thing I'm good at is cooking. I'm pretty good at cooking. So I'll spend a lot of time in the kitchen. But when in the kitchen, I listen to a lot of philosophy lectures, and that's probably my biggest interest. I'll listen to history and stuff like that, but I tend to like that type of stuff. Philosophy being my favorite. It's just hard to find people that want to discuss that stuff.
Yeah.
At least in my immediate circle, I need to go out and search them.
I always think that there's always people for every type of interest out there.
Yeah.
I try to I always try to one of those people that always try to apply logic to everything I do. And I have a friend who's inside the wrestling industry whose motto I take with me all the time, everywhere I go. I always teach it to my stepkids is treat every opportunity like it's an audition for your next opportunity. And I think I think you might know who said that. If you don't know, I'll tell you who said it afterwards.
Yeah.
And, that's like I always believe that we all nothing is guaranteed in life, so you have to work for every little thing, even if it's for the littlest of things too. Let's do a couple quick fire questions, and we'll wrap it up here.
Right on.
Okay, favorite match of all time. It's always a tough question.
Okay, it's not, but it is because it's what made me be a pro wrestler. Because I watched it over and over again, even though it's not very good, but I love it. WrestleMania 5, Mr. Perfect versus Blue Blazer.
Wow. Okay, I didn't expect that one, but that's awesome. Most surreal place to wrestle in, like arena
that I have wrestled in.
Yeah.
I know there's crazier, but recently, earlier this year, I wrestled in Swansea and Wales at a Coyote Ugly. And if you remember Coyote Ugly, they still exist in Wales. And it was a rainy Monday night. And the bar was the ring was tucked up in the corner of the bar, so nobody could even see it. And I wind up smashing my shin up real bad. Anyways, Coyote Ugly girls helped tend to me, and that was the most surreal moment in my life. Is that Welsh girls in Daisy Dukes and cowboy boots were tending to my wound.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I indie wrestling's really fun. Yeah, it's goofy.
First time you ever seen yourself with either an action figure or wrestling card or on any type of poster, how did that feel for you?
I guess I didn't appreciate it enough. Yeah, I didn't appreciate it enough. I got it to everything came to me real quick with wrestling. I started young and I got to TV pretty quickly.
Last one for me on this one. If you were to pick one wrestler that you enjoy watching wrestle right now in any of the wrestling organizations, who is
it? Ishii from New Japan. Yeah.
Okay. Any particular reason why? Is there anything Ishii does that's
I think so. What he does is he wrestles in a style that physically is believable, makes sense in that I can follow what's happening without having to understand pro wrestling. Like this would lead to that, and all the reactions and actions. You wrap your head around, makes perfect sense. But then somehow builds it all up. All these different things all lead to this exciting moments of just doing moves, but somehow I'm able to get wrapped up, and that's what the best of them do. And so the last match that really like wowed me like that was him versus Honma, and this would have been maybe 6 years ago. But the way they worked the headbutt, and that was just such a masterpiece.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Brian, hang on for 1 second. I want to thank you for coming on for this interview. This was a lot of fun for me. I'm glad that we were able to catch up and help tell some of these great stories, man. I can sit here and talk with you for hours and just listen to these stories.
Well, thanks for having me, Rand.
Awesome.
Very kind.
All right, that was the Brian Kendrick here on the Cut Pro Wrestling Podcast. Next episode, we are going to have Titus O'Neil, the real deal Titus O'Neil. Follow us at backsportspage.com and on all your podcast platforms. Good to be back here on the Cut Pro Wrestling Podcast. Some different formats coming to this, but we're going to keep bringing some exclusive interviews and some different things for you here on the Cut Pro Wrestling Podcast. Good to have everyone back with us here. Producer Alyssa Douglas and the crew. We always appreciate it. For the rest of us here, I'm Randy Zellea from Back Sports Page. You've been listening to the Cut Pro Wrestling Podcast. We'll see you next time.